The Void. Series 1, Episode 4, The Fillim Perspective, by Richard Marcus Powell. Chapter 1. The Degon system lay towards the rim of Republic space. It was located in a region some distance from the Jujin-Kai border, but never really explored in depth. It was a little off the beaten path when it came to the gateway network. It was considered a null system because it had a single gateway and was in effect a dead end. The Liberator sat in orbit around Degon Alpha, bathed in the rays from the yellow dwarf star. Carter stared out of the viewing gallery at the planet, marveling at it. There was more than a passing resemblance to Earth about it. It had continents, water, and ice, albeit in different ratios than he was used to. There was much more land on Degon Alpha, being roughly 40% of its surface. The oceans were distributed randomly across the planet, and it looked like the planet was in the midst of an ice age. For all he knew, that was normal for this planet, but it looked like an ice age. He'd been sat watching it for a full metric hour, beguiled by the familiar appearance. His media pad alarm went off, alerting him to the impending nature of his schedule. He had a briefing to get to. Leaving the viewing gallery, he found the nearest Parkwam docking station and stepped into it. The exoskeleton he wore whirred quietly as he shifted position. He was starting to move a little more freely now, though the pain was still there. "Kane, visitor conference center, please." "On our way, Mr. Vincent. I hope you found the spectacle most edifying." "I did, Kane. Reminds me of how Earth used to be." Carter found the Parkwam remarkable. He used it without being aware of its true nature, thinking of it as nothing more than a standard lift. It came as a shock to him when he realized it could move in all 3 dimensions. The name puzzled him as well, enough that it prompted him to question Kane about it, who revealed the source to be a Latin word, quoquam. This meant any place, which seemed appropriate. Somewhere down the line, the quo had been corrupted into par, which was thought to come from the Latin for equal, but academics were split on this. Upon arriving at the conference center, Carter alighted and made his way to the appointed room. He found himself entering the room the same time as someone else, someone he didn't recognize. He could see the captain, though, sat patiently at the head of the table. Carter hadn't actually met him yet, but he could easily recognize him. The senior officers were frequently on the ship media streams, so they were identifiable. There was a Fillim sat next to him. Well, sat was a term that was loosely defined. The Fillim's 3 legs were tucked in close to its body. This was done to save space, but it did seem like their way of sitting. There were a few Fillim on board, but Carter could not identify which one this was. If he were perfectly honest, they all looked the same to him. He recalled criticizing his father-in-law for expressing such sentiments. Now he was the Stone Age bigot. A few more people entered, one of which Carter recognized as Dr. Denham Richt. "Hello, Doctor. How are you?" "I'm perfectly fine, Mr. Vincent," Denham responded in his dry tone. "How are you settling in?" "Lots of training to do. Lots of research to catch up on, lots of bureaucracy to fill out," Carter announced. "They're certainly keeping me busy." "Is this your first assignment?" "More of a training exercise for me," Carter added. "Well, this should be a good learning experience for you." "I hope so. Plus, it'll be good to set foot on a planet again," Carter exclaimed. "On an actual alien planet. I know this is probably old hat to you, but I'm rather excited about all this." "It never gets old for me, Mr. Vincent," Denham replied. "There's always something new and fascinating, no matter where you go in the universe." A few more people entered, Commander Voight being one of them, and the room started to settle down as everyone took up positions. "Good morning, all," Schaefer started. "Good to see so many eager faces in here today." There was a small polite murmur that traveled around the room. "I'll try and keep this brief as you all know your roles today. I know this is a routine survey, but let's keep it to our usual high standard. This could be a future colony for millions of citizens, so we need to be as accurate as possible in our assessments. Doctor," Denham received the focus of the attention. "The Senate want Degon Alpha surveyed for future colonization, and both Dr. Lux Pang and myself will be coordinating that survey. However, due to the fact that there is an existing ecosystem on the planet, we need to be careful not to upset the natural balance," Denham recited. "To that end, Dr. Nevvon, who watches with patience of the Makeen Ecosystem, will be overseeing our work to assess the impact our presence may have and what could possibly be done to mitigate it." Carter looked around, trying to see if he could see this new xeno species that Denham had mentioned. Aside from the Fillim, everyone else was human, as far as he could tell. Noticing this, Denham responded, "Dr. Nevvon, who watches with patients, will be joining us in the Alpha hangar," Denham reminded. "We have several objectives here. Take environmental readings, catalog flora and fauna, and set up remote monitoring processes. This should give us a snapshot of the ecosystem as it currently stands, but also allow us to monitor any changes or new information whilst a strategy is being devised by the Senate." Dr. Lux Pang started speaking in that unique whistle of the Fillim. Due to the complex nature of the language, it took a few seconds for the translation to come through the Babel implant. "It has been decided that the human self-footprint leave too deep an impression on the ecosystem that the colonization will be deferred. Obviously, this will be unfortunate for human selves, but the ecosystem does take priority. Historically, the Triskel Corporation has damaged an untold number of worlds, which is why the Republic is committed to working in partnership with the Fillim and Makeen to work towards a more environmentally sound future," Denham elaborated. "You all have your allotted teams and destinations so that we can cover as many biomes as possible. If you have any questions, please consult your team leaders. Team leaders, if you have any questions, please consult either myself, Dr. Lux Pang, or Dr. Nevvon, who watches with patients." "One other thing," Commander Voight added. "Our new cultural advisor, Carter Vincent, will be joining us for this mission. He will be there to observe and gain some experience with cross-cultural fieldwork." "Finally, I'm sure you all know, but the atmospheric mix of Degon Alpha is close to human parameters, but it will still require the use of regulators." There were a few subdued complaints made around the room. "What's a regulator?" Carter asked, afraid of looking like the dumbest person in the room. Denham tossed a small plastic-wrapped package onto the table in front of Carter. "Open it, Mr. Vincent," Denham instructed. Carter unwrapped the item. It looked like a small frame with a gelatinous, almost mucus-like membrane suspended in the middle. "I don't understand." "It's a breathing apparatus. You place it at the back of your throat and it regulates the air that you breathe. They do have to be configured beforehand depending on the planet's specific atmosphere, but they help add or remove oxygen or scrub it to a level we are comfortable with. They are useful, but they only work in atmospheres close to what we are used to. If it was further away, we would need environmental suits. I put this in my throat. It will seem uncomfortable the first time, but you do get used to them. What if I swallow it?" "They're designed to break down in the stomach and collapse under the slightest pressure, to prevent choking. They're perfectly safe, just a little unpleasant." Carter regarded it with disdain. It looked deeply unpleasant. "Obviously, you can't eat with that in place, but you can drink." "I'm going to need a drink to put it in," Carter joked. The comment elicited a few amused chuckles from the room. "Don't forget to wear your gloves either," Denham reminded. "Our suits will prevent any bacteria contaminating the planet, but we do need to cover our hands as well." "Now, any further questions?" The room fell silent. "Okay then, let's get out there and do your best." Chapter 2. The Liberator's Alpha hangar was filled with transport shuttles as the teams prepared to travel to the surface of Degon Alpha. Carter had been given a full tour of the ship as part of his induction, but the scale of it still startled him. It was certainly big enough to hold smaller naval ship classes, and then there were all the bays scattered around the hangar, automated housings for the complement of ships. "We got every ship we need lined up in here, and we've still got plenty of room to spare," he commented. "Is this your first time in the hangar, human Carter Vincent?" Dr. Lux Pang asked as they stepped out of the park. No, it's my second time here," Carter answered. "Just unnerving how big it is." "Liberator is big by human standard, but other species have bigger," Lux commented. "Wait until you self-see Zanshi ship." "Are we comparing ship sizes?" Carter smirked. "I do not understand the context of question." Carter knew that he was going to do a lot of explaining. This was part of his new job, but he kept forgetting just how frequently he was going to need to do it. It was easy enough to forget just how context-sensitive everything was. "It's human humor, Doctor," Carter began. "We have a habit of comparing as a means of asserting dominance. Comparing ship sizes is a metaphor for this." "Yes, Self remembers this," Lux mused, whistling in abstract sequences. "Amusing, similar to Fillim third gender, but largely seen as ridiculous now." "We do as well, I guess. Well, most of the time," Carter explained. "But it still comes into play sometimes. Sometimes we understand your species' humor, and sometimes it seems out of place," Lux added. "Context can be difficult to read." "Honestly, it can be for us too. Imagine the difficulty for ourselves, then." "Good point," Carter admitted. "You want me to give a signal when I make a joke or humorous reference?" "That would be helpful, human Carter Vincent." "Okay, if I wink at you like this," Carter explained, winking cheekily, "and then push out my elbow like this, that's me indicating I've just said something humorous. We call that a nudge wink." "Is that a common human expression?" Lux queried. "Self does not believe Self has seen it before." "It was a way of indicating humor in my time, at least," Carter explained. "I don't know if it's still the case now. I doubt it, though." "Yes. You Self were the human who was in stasis for millennia," Lux realized. 2,000 years, Carter sighed. "Humans then didn't get beyond home planet, correct?" "Yeah, we thought we were pretty smart," Carter observed. "I look at it now and realize how dumb we actually were." "That is a realization most humans don't reach, human Carter Vincent," Lux praised. "Wisdom comes from realization that you Self know very little." "I must be the wisest person on the ship then," Carter joked, performing a nudge-wink maneuver. "Ah, I understand." Lux emitted a shrill whistle that was a little hard for Carter's ears. "I hope that was you laughing." It was. It was difficult for Carter to keep talking to Lux as they were moving. Lux's spinning form of locomotion on his 3 legs made it difficult for him to focus on a specific part of his face. Lux had a single compound eye that wrapped around the circumference of what Carter thought of as his head. Effectively, because of his symmetry, the whole circumference was his face, not just one side. Whereas humans had bilateral symmetry, giving them a distinct front and back, Fillim had a trilateral symmetry, with no distinct front and back. This trilateral symmetry was essential for their spinning, and it made the movement far more graceful than Carter could have ever imagined. Their agility was enhanced by the configuration of 3 arms and 3 legs, jointed around the vertical axis, but able to swivel around quite freely. Carter had to admit that being so close to something so alien was unnerving, but he was surprised at how well he was handling it. "You're getting along with Dr. Lux Pang, then?" Denham commented, sweeping in from the side. "Yeah, I think once you get over the initial shock of meeting a xeno, it's not so bad," Carter expressed. "Definitely weird, and understanding can be a chore, but it's definitely interesting." "I'm glad you're adapting so well. You're going to need that open-mindedness when you meet Dr. Nevvon, who watches with patience. Do all the xenos have such odd naming conventions?" "Ask Dr. Lux Pang for his Fillim name," Denham pointed out. "Lux Pang is what he thought we could cope with." They reached the central meeting point and gathered together with the main group. Carter could hear some chirping, along with something that sounded like little panpipes. There was something heavy moving around behind the shuttle in front of him. He could feel the thud of its feet, but he couldn't see it. Then it stepped around from behind the shuttle. The beast was around 10 foot tall and had a similar body structure he recognized from films he watched. "It's a velociraptor!" "That, Mr. Vincent, is a Makeen. That is our Dr. Nevvon, who watches with patience," Denham corrected. "It may look a little like one, but it's definitely not a dinosaur." "Looks like one to me." The Makeen had a bulky, muscular body orientated on the horizontal plane. The head was quite lizard-like, but the skin was less scaly and more human-like, being a contiguous layer covered in pores. The mouth was huge, containing many serrated teeth capable of rendering flesh with ease. The lower jaw was divided with 3 separate sections that could operate independently, giving it a flexibility that no dinosaur could have managed. The head also possessed 3 eyes, 2 facing part forwards and part sideways, and the third facing directly forward. This gave the creature a wide panorama and excellent depth perception. From the middle of the skull was a ridge that seemed to radiate outwards at the back of the skull, forming 5 hollow horns. Carter could see the creature had 6 limbs as well. The rear 2 were massive muscular legs and the center of gravity for it. The middle 2 were clawed arms, less muscular but much more flexible. The claws themselves were unusual, being jointed in such a way to allow a great deal of movement, making them excellent grasping and manipulating tools. The front 2 arms were barely visible, being folded up against the chest. They were long and jointed in a way that allowed them to fold into a minimal space against their chest. It looked as if they had evolved to help manipulate food, holding it steady for those massive jaws. It was quite a colorful creature as well, with the skin possessing a multitude of colors, from green to pink to yellow, all arranged in a dazzling pattern that would have helped with camouflage. In addition to this, there was extensive tattooing across the body, and Carter was sure he could make out nipples on its underside, which would have suggested a creature that suckles its young. The Makeen's back was covered with something that looked like plates that fit together like jigsaw puzzles. What their purpose was, Carter couldn't fathom, but they did form a continuous line along the spine, if it did indeed possess a spine. The tail was long and used for balance, but the end had some form of barbed structure. It didn't look like a poison delivery system, but it did look like it could deliver a nasty strike. The Makeen was all predator, powerful, intimidating, and weaponized. It started squawking in a manner not unlike a bird, the squawks accompanied by panpipe sounds that Carter realized was coming from the horns on the back of its head. The words it spoke made themselves known as the Babel implant started to translate. I am Dr. Nevvon, who watches with patience. I am pleased to see so many humans keen to preserve an ecosystem, and I thank the Republic for acceding to our request to take a more progressive approach to colonization, the Makeen announced. For so many cycles, the Makeen despaired of the humans and the planets they defiled, but this new appreciation for the environment has given us hope. Carter was having a hard time understanding how such a bestial creature could be so erudite. For a while now, we have been liaising with the Republic, acting as advisors and working with humanity to develop environmentally friendly technologies, and we have been pleased with the progress so far. I hope our collaboration here will bear similar fruit. Doctor, we appreciate you traveling all this distance to assist with this survey, Denham thanked. To the Makeen, nothing is more important than the ecosystems of the universe, and when we find a similar enthusiasm in another species, we will do all we can to encourage it, the doctor responded. Thank me by continuing this trend. It is our intention, Denham smiled. Now, if we are all ready, we should divide up into our teams and start our individual missions. The group started to move around, locating their teammates in appropriate shuttle. Dr. Lux Pang, are you with us? Carter asked. Yes. Self was assigned to you self-team so that we selves may converse. Dr. Nevvon, who watches with patience, would you care to join our team? Denham asked. I would be privileged. Carter shot Denham a disapproving glance. This is what you're here for, Mr. Vincent, Denham shot back with a sly nod, to get to know all the different cultures. Carter realized that the doctor did indeed have a sense of humor. Don't worry, I'll look after you, he announced quietly. Just try to not look like prey. Very funny, Doc. The humongous Makeen trotted over to where they stood, the ground vibrating with every footstep. Doctor, you know Dr. Lux Pang. This is Dr. Rachel Verlaine, and this is Mr. Carter Vincent, our new cultural advisor. Ah, yes, the man out of time, Nevvon noted. I read your profile on the way here. How are you finding the future? It's been quite an upheaval, Carter understated. Every time I think I'm starting to get an handle of things, something new comes along that shakes things up entirely. Your first time meeting one of my kind, then? Yeah. I know I must appear terrifying to you, but don't worry. I don't bite. He could see Denham smirking at his unease. I'm very glad to hear that. Will you be coming in our shuttle? I don't think I'll fit in there. I'll use my own ship. Okay then, we'll meet you down there. Dr. Nevvon, who watches with patience, strode off towards her own ship. Friend, that was a nudge-wink moment, was it not? Dr. Lux Pang observed. Yes, it was, Carter replied. Not from my point of view, though. Chapter 3. Victor Heller looked out of the enormous windows in his office, staring down at the sprawling estate he owned, and then the blighted city beyond. Outside lay what was once a massive garden, now reduced to a gnarled and twisted, desolate parody of what one should be. Nothing lived on that land anymore. The biodiversity long since killed off, leaving behind the barren stalks and trunks. It had been that way for hundreds of solar cycles, and not being broken down over time as the bacteria required for such a biological process were long since dead. He was thinking about relocating the corporation's headquarters elsewhere. Soma was simply too toxic. Not that that was an option for the general population, but they didn't care, medicated into blissful ignorance. Victor was old and corrupted, his health failing, and he could feel the end approaching, so he could feel some affinity for the planet. They were both on their last legs, struggling for breath and body withering away. There was a clicking sound as feet struck the marble floor. Victor didn't need to look over his shoulder to know who it was. You wanted to see me, sir? I did, Miss Korolev, Victor responded. I have a favor to ask. What is it, sir? I have been having a few brainstorming sessions with some of the department's heads recently, and we've been looking at ways to increase our market share. Forgive me, sir, but wouldn't that be impossible without causing a war with our competitors? There are limitations. I grant you that, Victor receded. We cannot confront Aleph or Teal directly. They're too strong for us at the moment. Maybe Jung, but we don't border any of the territory. And the Republic? Again, any conflict with them is going to be costly. So are we looking at more covert forms of aggressive competition? Exactly, Miss Korolev, Victor confirmed. When you can't compete directly, you have to be a little more creative about it. Victor manipulated his wheelchair, guiding it to his desk. Now what we need is more territory. We cannot compete with Aleph and Teal because they have more territory and therefore more resources. So we need to change that, Victor indicated. We've identified 2 regions that we would like to acquire. The first is in Republic space. It used to be owned by the Helo Corporation until we lost it to Triskel during the Corporate War. Bit before my time, sir, Korolev pointed out with dry humor. Bit before mine, too, Victor chuckled. I ain't that old. Victor initiated a holographic star chart, which took up a large part of the open floor to the side of his desk. A shade started descending on the window in order to screen out the light and allow a better view of the model. A large section was highlighted on the border of Republic space. All this used to be owned by Heller. We colonized it. We settled it. It is our investment, not theirs, Victor preached. We'll just be righting a wrong. So how do you intend to reclaim this territory without confronting the Republic? We play to our strengths, Victor hinted. We need to destabilize the region and make it difficult for the Republic to administer, and we can do that by flooding the market with new narcotics. We get enough people hooked, they'll concede to our control with little resistance. Isn't that a little obvious, sir? They suspect our involvement. Suspicion is not the same as proof, Victor contradicted. It's not the same as when Triskel was running things.
Now they need proof of our involvement before they go to war. As long as we can maintain deniability, we can avoid direct conflict.
So, we need an intermediary.
Precisely. We need someone to act as our puppet drug lord, Victor answered. Someone they can't link to us.
Then I suggest that we use someone with a xeno species. It'll add another degree of separation.
Good thinking, Miss Korolev. Have you got anyone in mind?
We have a few contacts that might be interested in such a scheme, Korolev explained. I think our contact in the Dantikar might be the best option.
The Dantikar? Won't they balk at operating illegal activities?
Generally, yes, but every society has its transgressors.
But can we trust them?
Oh, yes, sir. As with all people, it's all about knowing their motivations and giving them what they want, Korolev observed. And this Dantikar is desperate to establish his clan as a major player in their society.
We can exploit their ambition? Good.
It has to be a mutually beneficial arrangement to be effective, sir, Korolev pointed out. If he feels we are exploiting him, it would endanger us. I suggest we keep him sweet and offer him more than he expects. If he feels valued in that respect, we'll be more likely to keep that secrecy.
You're right. That makes sense. Keep him on our side, Victor conceded. Can you approach him and set up a meeting with him, if he is willing?
I'll get on it immediately. He might even be in Hella territory at the moment, as his clan does trade with us on a regular basis.
Excellent. I'll leave that in your capable hands, then.
What was the other region, sir?
The other region is in Alef space. It's a particularly rich region for resources, including a few we could really benefit from, Victor explained. Again, destabilization is the key, but we can't use the same tactic against Alef. The narcotic trade simply won't work anywhere near as well there. They might like to pretend they're a free society, but they're far from it.
I presume you're thinking of something more traditional in this case, sponsoring rebel elements in their society?
In a manner of speaking, I'm thinking less terrorism and more peaceful opposition. Violence can frighten off supporters. What we do need is to channel funding to some anti-state group that is going to cause disruption, but elicit some sympathy at the same time. That way, I think we can spread the disruption further afield and also get more from money.
That is quite devious, sir, Korolev complimented. I think I know what you have in mind.
I'm sure you do. I'm sure you've probably come up with the same idea independently and have stored it away for just the right moment.
When you're managing so many different plans, it makes sense to make contingencies, Korolev replied. But Aleph do have an issue in that their means of control can lead to disillusionment, and that can be turned against them.
Aspiration is no substitute for addiction.
Quite, Korolev responded with little disdain. Do you have a specific organization in mind, or would you like me to do some research into the existing groups and see if any of them suit our purposes?
If you could look into them, that would be great.
As you wish, sir. Is there anything else?
Yes. I have some instructions from the last meeting that need to be passed on to the appropriate people. Could you see that they are properly delegated?
Of course.
Victor produced a small cube and held it out for her to take. Korolev looked at it as though it were a cockroach. Oh, I'm sorry, Miss Korolev. I forget. Victor placed the cube into a plastic holder and placed it down for her to pick up.
Korolev whipped out some gloves from her pocket and put them on, before gingerly picking up the plastic container.
She scrutinized it with contempt and started to walk toward the door, holding the device at arm's length. Thank you, Miss Korolev.
I'll keep you updated, sir.
Victor sat at his desk with assured contentment.
It was good to have competent staff like Karelian Korolev. He'd watched her climb the ladder over the years. I was impressed how she was ruthless and ambitious, but also dedicated to the company, despite her little eccentricities. Not many people managed to do what she had achieved. Most of the executive class inherited their status, but she fought her way up from the lower ranks. Victor had been so impressed that he'd taken her on as his personal adjutant and afforded her a great deal of authority. Even the department heads did not possess the authority she did, and if they had, she would probably have them all dancing to her tune. And yet, her ambition had not affected their relationship. Korolev was grateful for the trust he invested in her, and she repaid that with loyalty. Chapter 4. Landing on the planet proved to be remarkably smooth, a form of maglev or magnetic levitation used to stabilize and land the craft, with the reactor engine providing the main propulsion. Carter remembered how bouncy aircraft landing used to be in comparison. "Time to put your regulator in, Mr. Vincent," Denham reminded. "I didn't forget," Carter protested. "I just, How do you put this in?" Denham unwrapped his own packet and placed his regulator into his mouth. "The trick is not to force it back, but to roll it along the surface of your mouth," Denham explained. "It will snap into place. If you force it, it will just break and you will end up swallowing most of it. Not pleasant, but harmless." Carter placed the object in his mouth and did what Denham recommended, and it slid across his tongue, slowly moving it backward. He started to gag as the reflex was triggered by the intruder. He started to speak, but could not articulate the words. "Just a little further, you'll know when it's in position." Carter felt a little click at the back of his throat, and the gag reflex stopped as he removed his fingers. "God, that's weird. It feels like it should be choking me, but it isn't." "You'll get used to the feeling." "I doubt that. It feels like I've swallowed a cocktail umbrella." "Human Carter Vincent will be fine. The regulator is compatible to human physiology. Fillim have cybernetic implants for working with humans. Is that right?" "Yes. Fillim cannot tolerate human atmosphere, so we selves have an implant that converts atmosphere into something we selves can breathe." "Is it uncomfortable?" "Yes, but you self forget it's there over time." "It's still preferable to wearing the full environment suit," Denham expressed. "I think I'd prefer the suit," Carter replied. "Rachel, could you lower the ramp?" Dr. Verlaine complied, and the back of the shuttle unfolded like origami, resulting in a small ramp leading down the back of the vehicle. "That was cool," Carter acknowledged. "So that all fits together and just folds up. That's quite smart." "Ship designs have had a lot of practice," Denham dismissed. The exterior was a lush meadow filled with something that was reminiscent of grass, but a pinkish-red color and with a broader leaf. There were trees in the distance that looked like giant pitcher plants, and he could hear the wind. "Human Carter Vincent like to be first?" Lux queried. Yeah, okay." Carter suddenly realized about what he was doing. He was setting foot on an alien world untouched by humanity. He was following in the footsteps of grand historical figures like Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin, helping advance the human species. As he stepped out, he couldn't help imitating, "Thus spake Zarathustra," with the crescendo happening as his foot landed on the pink grass. "What was the relevance of the tune?" "Oh, it comes from an old movie," Carter responded sheepishly. "You don't know what I'm referring to. It may have been lost to antiquity, Mr. Vincent. If I find 2001: A Space Odyssey has been forgotten and Paul Blart Mall Cop is still around, I'm going back in stasis. Is that a nudge-wink moment, friend?" "Yeah, for what it's worth," Carter answered. "Don't worry, Doctor. I didn't understand either," Denham shrugged. "Sure is beautiful here, though." Stunningly beautiful, but strikingly alien at the same time. To the left was a tree with long, distended fronds that reached to the ground from the very top. The fronds appeared to glisten and had what appeared to be a hook at the end. The trunk looked broad and not unlike coral, with a flat top. However, because the fronds radiated from the top, it looked as though it was at least slightly hollow. Something passed him through the pink grass. It had a flat top and looked like a slab of stone from his point of view, but it was pushing itself along the floor, whatever it was. Another creature glided by, looking like a stomach with leathery wings.
Elizabeth would have loved this,
Carter sighed as melancholy settled upon him again,
especially the pink grass.
Come on, let's find Dr. Nevvon, who watches with patients. Dillon quickly noted how Carter invoked his daughter's name and sought to distract him before he could start brooding. He thought reminding him of the discomfort he felt and the Makeen might do it.
Where did she land?
Rachel asked. Just over there, over that ridge. Carter looked in the direction Denham indicated, taking in the scenery. The pink grassy hills undulated in the distance. Weird rock-like trees grew in clusters before converging into a geometric forest. Some creatures grazed in a field, their elongated bodies hosting multiple pairs of legs, but no distinct head. Instead, it just lowered itself down onto the pink pseudo-grass and started eating through a mouth located on its underside. As they moved around slowly, they seemed to be grumbling at each other, guttural noises that didn't form anything articulate, just instinct. Looking upwards, the sky was a deep azure with few clouds drifting across, isolated from each other. The sun looked very similar to the one he was used to, only appearing larger, which was disconcerting in itself. As the group started moving, Carter paused to look at the tree they were near. Something small and possessed of only a single foot hopped out of cover and started to lick the fronds. Carter was entranced by the tiny creature and moved to get a closer look. He started talking to it, much as he did with his daughter's cat.
Friend, do not get too close,
Dr. Luxpang recommended.
Things may look harmless, can be deadly.
Carter acknowledged this by backing away a little. The little one-footed critter returned to licking the frond before it suddenly reacted, wrapping itself around the tiny animal and retracting the whole limb back into the trunk. The top of the tree was not just an end to the trunk. It was a mouth. The little animal squeaked before it was ended by the carnivorous plant.
Don't get too close. Good rule,
Carter commented, stunned by the sudden strike.
Nature is violent, human Carter Vincent,
Lux observed as they started to catch up with Denham and Rachel.
Red in tooth and claw,
Carter paraphrased.
An interesting way to phrase it.
It comes from a poet, Tennyson, I think.
Not familiar with that one. Poetry is an interesting aspect of humanity. Difficult for ourselves to process, but undeniably curious,
Lux expressed.
Words are music.
The Fillim not have poetry then?
Words are as functional as ourselves. They are descriptors. They have their own aesthetic qualities,
Lux continued.
Humans like to use words to mean multiple, often contrary meanings. We selves like words to have specific meanings.
You must have a lot of trouble with human speech.
We selves adapt. It is difficult, but we selves are learning.
From the moment he had first encountered the Fillim, Carter had been fascinated by them. Physically, they had been nothing like he'd expected, but he was starting to get a bit more familiar with their cultural differences. Their relationship with the Republic was relatively recent, but they seemed keen to help. But there were limits. Fillim helped humans wherever they could, but they did stick to a golden rule: human technology only. The Fillim seemed keen on cooperation with many species, but there seemed to be a clear difference between cooperation and advancement. But they would not use any of their own technology. It must be confusing to be amongst us all the time, Carter observed.
Very much so. But we selves are to learn from yourselves as much as yourselves are to learn from ourselves.
Carter listened carefully, trying to separate the pronoun soup.
Well, if I can help in any way,
do please let me know.
Thank you, human Carter Vincent, Lux expressed. It is a pleasure to be building relationships with humans.
Likewise, Doctor. They continued in their ramble towards the Makeen shuttle.
It's also overwhelming, Carter suddenly quipped. How so, friend? Look here, it's just so amazing.
Carter gesticulated grandly.
I'm halfway across the universe hiking across an alien planet with a xeno friend,
And the whole thing is just so beautiful. Is that why you yourself is crying?
Carter hadn't realized he'd let a tear slip and quickly dabbed it away.
Yes, he lied. It's just all so unspoiled. Makes me wonder whether Earth was like this before we spoiled it. That is part of the reason we selves are here, friend, Lux reasoned. To see if you selves can live here without spoiling it. I'll admit, we've not got a good track record. That is an understatement, Lux commented. Self is glad that you self can appreciate everything before yourself for what it is. And the same is true of the Republic. But the corporations still carry out the more base destructive tendencies of you self-species. I'm still learning about all that, Carter revealed. Companies didn't care back in my life, and they don't care now. I think the only thing that's really changed is that they're more honest now. They stop pretending. That is not a good thing. No, it's not. It's just different, Carter mused. Anyway, the corporate empires are not the Republic. They had crested the ridge and could see the Makeen shuttle. The doctor was already analyzing the environment, manipulating a device in her powerful paws with a dexterity that belied her size. "Doctor!" Denham called out. They quickly closed the distance between them and met up with Dr. Nevvon, who watches with patience.
Hello again,"
the giant saurian creature greeted.
"This is as close as I could land. My transport is too big to land any closer."
"Well, we're all here now," Denham acknowledged. "I see you've started doing the analysis. With Dr. Verlaine's assistance, I can start setting up the crawler drones for the long-term analysis. Dr. Lux's pack could start cataloging the flora and fauna."
"I would be happy to, human Dr. Denham Richt."
"Mr. Vincent, could you give the doctor a hand?"
"Sure. I have all the equipment you need, Doctor,"
Dr. Nevvon, who watches with patience, announced.
"Thank you, Doctor,"
Lux responded, spinning his way toward a shuttle. Hearing the honorifics being referred to so freely, Carter started to feel a little inferior. He was the only non-doctor present and felt like a glorified assistant. This was always meant to be training for him, intended to give him hands-on experience in working with other cultures. His analysis was to be how to improve working relationships between allied species.
"Self has collected everything we selves need."
Lux returned with some packs and a levitating trolley.
"Can you self-carry this, please?"
Carter grabbed the offered pack and strapped it to himself. "Do you need me to push that?"
"If you self would, friend," Lux ceded. "It is not really built for Fillim to use."
"How do I operate it? Is there like a motor?"
"One button, 2 modes. Press to extend legs for when at rest. Press again to hover and move," Lux explained. "Modules go in front. In these modules we have specimen collection containers. In these, tools for scanning animals."
"Small specimens only, then?"
"Only need samples for genetic analysis," Lux added. "Whole specimens only taken in certain circumstances."
"Okay.
Now, is you self ready?"
Carter nodded.
"Then let us selves go forth and discover."
Chapter 5. The ecosystem of Dagon Alpha was proving to be dense and varied. Chronicling it all was going to be a mighty task. Carter was scraping a turd from the undergrowth and carefully cramming it into a specimen container.
"This isn't what I had in mind on specimen collecting,"
Carter complained.
"Fecal matter can contain genetic material,"
Lux commented, matter-of-factly.
"Getting genetic material from live specimen can be dangerous, like tree earlier." "I understand that, but why not sedate the animals and collect the genetic material?" "Biochemistry. Ourselves do not know enough yet to know how to sedate them," Lux answered. "If ourselves get too close, there is increased risk of cross-infection and contamination too."
"Thought these suits protected us from that kind of thing."
"They self do. But if suit ripped by angry animal, cross-contamination," Lux rationalized. "Static flora easier to sample with lower risk."
"Okay, but does the organic matter always have to be?"
"Can be many things. Can be eggshells, slouched skin, discarded scales," Lux continued. "Just common,
Carter laughed out loudly, enjoying the absurdity of profane jocularity with an alien. He placed the vial of excrement into the trolley and logged the sample details on the manifest. I didn't expect there to be worlds like this, with an environment so close to Earth, Carter noted, especially one with so many plants and animals. Plants with life are common, Lux elaborated. Planets with complex life are rare. Planets with complex life with similar atmosphere that humans can breathe, very rare. Yet we're still here. They self may be rare, human Carter Vincent, but have you self any idea how many planets there are within the Republic alone? Lux continued. Frequency may make these planets exist in numbers. Rare they selves may be, but there are still millions of themselves. Intelligent species, I suppose, are even rarer. Extremely so. Look at the galactic community. 16 major species and a handful of minor ones, from billions of worlds, Lux stated. There are many others, but few ever ascend. Ascend? Ascendancy. Reach interstellar travel, Lux added. So many civilizations die before themselves get that far. That's depressing. So much wasted potential, Lux added with despondency evident in his voice. Carter did wonder whether this despondency was his own brain interpreting it that way, or whether the Babel implant was advanced enough to pick up on these sophisticated nuances in xeno speech. Nearly happened to Fillim too. Fillim nearly destroyed ourselves before Fillim even left our self-home planet. I thought you were a pacifist culture. You self do not need to be violent to destroy yourself. Fillim were thoughtless and selfish back then. Fillim lacked control, Lux explained with some shame as he plucked some petals from a strange alien flower. Fillim very nearly destroyed our self-home world out of sheer ignorance. But some Fillim valued intelligence, and they saved our self-species. Sounds strangely familiar. Very similar to what you self-humans did to your self-home world. It's disturbing to think Earth is now uninhabitable. The Fillim homeworld was uninhabitable for a very long time, but we selves reclaimed it eventually. Carter was curious about the timescale here. He knew the Fillim were referred to as an elder species, but if they had both destroyed and reclaimed their home world in that time, Lux must have been referring to a long timescale. How long ago was that? Many millions of triskelion years, Lux explained, blithely. Humans hadn't even evolved at the time we selves reclaimed it. This astounded Carter. He knew they were an ancient species, but he had no idea it was gauged in millions of years. That's some time. Cosmically speaking, it's still an eye blink, Lux philosophized. But Fillim and humanity have some common experience. This is why we self tried to help. But only since the Republic, Carter indicated. I presume the old Triskel Corporation wasn't interested. Before the Republic, Fillim didn't hold out much hope for humanity. Yourselves may have survived the death of your self-home world, but it was by the narrowest of margins. Your species flourished afterwards. So will humanity. There is a fundamental difference between our self-species, human Carter Vincent. When we selves nearly destroyed our self-home world and nearly made ourselves extinct, Fillim learned ourselves lesson. Humanity did not. Lux judged harshly. They self continued to destroy worlds in the same way as they selves destroyed their self-own. The Republic is different now. The Republic is only a small percentage of the whole of humanity, Lux reasoned. Before the Republic, Fillim expected humanity to eventually die out. Fillim still think that is the most likely outcome, but it has given your self-species a slim chance. If a human said such a thing, they'd be thought of being as judgmental. It is merely the product of Fillim's statistical analysis. So why opposite all if it's so futile? Carter quizzed with a little frustration. Because Fillim want humanity to survive, Lux answered. We do not want yourselves' potential to be wasted. Carter stopped rooting around in the foliage to look at the doctor.
Perhaps we selves could see a little of what we selves could have been, Lux added. So there's a genuine empathy for humanity? Of course. We selves care greatly about humanity's future, but some of you self-species do not make it easy. No, I guess we don't, Carter responded truthfully. Hell, there's been plenty of times I've felt humanity could just burn. And it's my species. Could you self get a sample of that plant-like mass there, friend self? Lux indicated the organic mound with his enormously outstretched arm. This one? Yes. So do you feel as though you're wasting your time with us? Self has enjoyed myself time amongst you selves humans, Lux expressed. It is true that you self are complex and often self-destructive, and self frequently fail to understand yourselves' nuances. But self sees great potential in yourselves as well. Self wouldn't be here if self thought otherwise. But you still think we're doomed? Unless there is a big change in your self-species? Yes, Lux determined. Is this a common perception among xeno species? There are variations, but they selves all tend to paint humanity in a bad light, Lux admitted. Yourself standing in the galactic community is not high. That makes my job quite difficult then. Dr. Lux Pang relaxed for a moment, amused. People like yourself are going to be crucial for humanity's future, Lux stated ominously. Some self need to build bridges between cultures, and you self are in a prime position for that. That's just made me feel about 1,000 times the pressure I felt before. It's an important job, underrated, even by the Republic, Lux posited. Humanity needs friends if it is to survive in the long term. I've always been of the opinion that diversity breeds flexibility, which is good for business, Carter opined. Some people think many voices are a distraction, but I think they offer you options. Yes, important to stay open to new ideas, Lux agreed. And new civilizations, I guess. Yes, myself, friend self. Lux whistled in agreement. Build relationships with other cultures and learn from themselves. Well, that's what I'm here for. Learn well, human Carter Vincent, Lux warned. The Republic gives us selves hope that humanity is not lost, but there is much work to be done. Lux rotated into a new position so that he could better forage through a bush-like structure. Though his demeanor was friendly, the meaning of his words were laced with earnestness. Self will help wherever self can, he added. Self has friends in different species who would be able to help. They selves would be happy to build relationships with receptive humans. I appreciate the offer. I'm not sure where to start, though. No need to have a purpose to make a friend, Lux reasoned. Self would introduce you to others. You self get to know a little about each other, and you self act as contacts for each other. It sounded like Lux was trying to put him in touch with a network of contacts between species. This would be very useful for him, but it was a little intimidating. From his point of view, it was a lot of information to assimilate in one go. Still, he could see the benefits here. He studied enough of history to realize that half of all diplomacy was having friendly contacts in each faction. How many times was disaster averted by a few people talking to each other? I admit, I am a little wary of all this, as it is all still a bit new to me. It is okay. They selves will understand. Ourselves all start somewhere, yes? They both went back to their tasks, remaining silent for a while. Doctor, may I ask you a question? Of course, friend. Ask away. I was curious as to why the Fillim help humanity, but don't use any of your science, Carter asked. I understand that you might not want to give us technology, but why don't you steer our research towards certain areas? Big question. Fillim want to help humanity, but Fillim do not want to give themselves easy answers. Technology unearned can cause big problems, Lux explained. No consideration given to the consequences. You think we'd act irresponsibly with it? You self species may be populous, but you selves have an uncanny talent for mutual destruction. The distance involved does not seem to be a limit for yourselves' species' violent tendencies, Lux assessed. Add in advanced technology, and that which Fillim seek to avoid becomes inevitable. I'll follow that. Must be difficult for you, though, when you know all the answers but watch you stumbling towards the wrong one. Yes, but it is so much more rewarding to see you subspecies achieve the correct one with the right approach. You make it sound like we're children. Compared to many of the elder species, yourself are, Lux responded with brutal honesty. Only a few species have ascended more recently than humans. Carter felt that maybe this was a harsh judgment on humanity, but he couldn't argue with the chronology. Only 2 species had joined the galactic community after them, one a millennia, and apparently that was much faster than normal. I suppose we can be immature. The corporation's approach towards xenoculture shows that humanity hasn't adapted to the concept that they selves are no longer at the center of all things. Lux continued unabated. It is a difficult concept to accept, but it is what marks maturity. You're pretty hard on humanity, Doctor. I mean, I'm quite cynical, so I kind of agree with most of what you say. But it's hard nonetheless. If self is hard in self-assessment, friend, it is because identifying a problem is the first step toward fixing it, Lux countered. Self does not mean to be offensive, but at the same time, it does no good to live in denial. Part of me wants to argue the case for humanity, but another part of me recognizes what you're saying is quite true, Carter sighed. To use a human analogy, lies are sweet, but the truth is bitter. We've always been prone to believe in lies because we want to live in fantasy. Yourself seem quite wise for a human Carter Vincent. I'll take that as a compliment, Carter answered. But it's just cynicism. The two are not exclusive, Lux observed. Maybe so, Carter smirked. He couldn't tell if the Fillim was being humorous or not, but he suspected he was. It was probably going to take him a long time to read their body language. The laugh they emitted was a solid indicator, as it was noticeably different to their usual whistles, but that was the only indicator he had at the moment. Still, it was nice to know that aliens had a sense of humor at all. He stood up, feeling a pain in his lower back from crouching and leaning for so long. The sky was clear and the sun was bright. Despite the rather dour note of the conversation he had just had with the Fillim, he oddly felt rather positive. It could have been simply the fact that he had his feet on the ground for the first time in a millennia. Even with the awkward regulator stuck in the back of his throat, it felt good to breathe fresh air. It did taste slightly of strawberries for some inexplicable reason, but it was fresh. The burden of despair had lifted as well, if only for a while, but it was welcome. He was stood on an alien planet, staring at a beautiful landscape whilst talking with a peculiar alien about the innate stupidity of the species he was part of. The absurdity of it all was amusing. You know, Doctor, you may well be right about humanity, Carter smiled, but we've avoided extinction before. The Fillim propped himself up with a spade, whilst continuing to use the other 2 arms to curate a specimen. It may contradict rational analysis, human Carter Vincent, but self does have hope. Chapter 6. The planet Caliban was the hub of the Teal Corporation, heart of the dominion of Con Teal and his dynasty. It had been planet-shaped early on in the Great Expansion, but was already in an advanced state of decay, resembling Earth towards the end of its life. Pollution was rampant, and civilians wandered the streets with portable ventilators and respirator-equipped visors. Where urban areas did not exist, industrial ones did instead. The only place where the sounds of industry did not echo were the abandoned mines, resources long since exploited. The planet was a maze of concrete and pipes, graphene and glass, expressway and rail. It was a planet where technology had become rotten. The edifices of civilization had decayed and society had separated. Caliban's star struggled to make itself seen through the pustulant clouds,
a brown haze covering the horizon. The capital city of Menen dominating it, and its angular geometry. And yet, Conteal stared out over the landscape with a sense of pride, not for its beauty, but for what it represented. His subjugation of billions. His father had initially founded the company, but he had taken it from a sizable company on Earth to an interstellar one, to the largest corporation in the history of mankind. Oh yes, Conteal had been on Earth before the Holocene extinction. From his private office, he could stare out over the city in 3 separate directions, massive broad windows giving him the best view of the open wound that was Menen. The office itself was decorated in bronze and wood, an aesthetic that pleased him. A little unconventional perhaps, but it was something that felt warm to him, welcoming. He turned to the other person in the room and stared at him. Legate Chandra was an old man, but keen of wit. Indeed, it was a sign of his intellect that he'd managed to become an old man whilst being one of his advisors. Con had a high bar for his advisors, and they frequently failed to clear it. Sir, if I may interrupt your reverie, I have 2 points of business to clear up.
What are they, Legate?
The first concerns Governor Patain.
Which planet are they responsible for?
Gelen.
Ah, yes. The uprising.
Con knew what had happened on Gelen. A rebellion of the work miners had occurred, leading to a cessation of production. He had to quell the riot by sending in the militia and restart production through force. Yes, sir. The governor is awaiting sentence.
What was the standard punishment for failed governors again?
That would be the...
Ah, yes. Cruel but necessary,
Con expressed.
I'd rather not order such casual brutality, Legate, but order must be maintained. Make it happen.
Indeed, sir. No clemency for Governor Patain, then?
None. They are aware of what happens when they fail. Should I fail to ensure it, then they will become complacent, and then discipline starts to break down, Con explained. I've been alive long enough to know that nothing works at enforcing obedience quite like excruciating punishment.
It's pragmatic, if nothing else.
Exactly, Legate. Con agreed. I used to be quite merciful in my youth. Terrible mistake. Nobody does what is expected of them. We had some success with psychology, but nothing works quite like the old classics.
I shall arrange it then. Will you be attending, sir?
No, I don't think so, Con decided. Should I be present, it might infer that the incident was of greater importance than it was. Better for me to dismiss it for its insignificance.
Very good, sir, Legate grovelled. Any special considerations?
How many militia were lost quashing the insurrectionist miners?
Around 5,000, sir. As you wish. Con was almost dismissive in his cruelty, but it was justified. He'd ordered legions of barbaric punishments over the years and barely felt any kind of remorse. It was simply the price of doing business, and business had always been cutthroat.
What was the other item of business?
Mirakando is waiting to see you.
Excellent. Bring Mira in.
Legate operated a small media pad, instructing the assistant outside to send in the infamous manhunter. The doors opened and a figure strode in. Around average height, but with a muscular frame, the figure was entirely encased in armor, a helmet hiding any individual distinctions. The armor was of unique manufacture. It was made by the Akaran. This made it unique as the Akaran had a totally different physiology to humans, so this was a rare custom design for them. The helmet itself was a work of art, as all Akaran designs were, designed to be as intimidating as it was practical. It conveyed a bestial snarl, or a facsimile of one, despite not even having a face. The overall effect of the armor was to be very intimidating and anonymous. Con had conducted business with Mira for a decade now, and he still had no idea who was behind the mask. The only reason he could guarantee that Mira was human
was the fact that there were no other species with the same physiological build. Not that he cared. Mira was a ruthless and determined individual with an impressive success rate. Not perfect, but high enough that it put everyone else in the shade. So impressive was Mira's track record that Con deigned to meet with them personally.
Con?
Mira.
The greeting was terse and lacking in any geniality, but these were established business partners, not friends.
You wanted to see me?
I did. I have to express a small amount of disappointment in you, Mira.
Scan.
Yes, Scan. Con nodded. You failed me there. Had it been anyone else, I would have been very disappointed. But Scan was, the star pupil of our covert operations. He is slippery.
He played his hand well,
Mira answered.
As soon as the dreadnought appeared, it was over.
He should never have been able to get into Republic space, Con determined.
Not my concern.
Mira responded.
Intelligence was poor.
Nonetheless, I do feel like restitution is owed for this rare failure, Con argued. I have a little task in mind. No capture this time. Just... The target is different to what you'd normally expect.
Who's the target?
A Colombian diplomat by the name of Brother Key, Con revealed. His death will ruffle a few feathers as the Colombian are well liked by the xeno community.
A target's a target,
Mira stated.
but the risk does entail an extra 15% on top of the offer for Scan. I don't care if you feel you are owed restitution. I work for currency.
You will do it then?
Providing you pay me, yes.
Con assessed Mira quietly. The mercenary's tone was a little insubordinate and not something he usually tolerated, but to react to this would be a waste of a good resource. Had Mira refused the task, he would have taken it further, but for now, he let it slide.
You'll get your payment upon completion.
Then we have a deal.
Excellent. I'll ensure the details are sent to you. Con congratulated with restraint. I don't need an example made. It's just an obstacle to be removed. So expedience is preferred.
I've got some business to attend to on Caliban first, but that should only take a few hours.
You're not hunting any Teal employees, are you?
No.
Good. I don't care if it's a citizen, but senior employees and militia are off limits, Con warned. I afford you a great deal of latitude in deference to your skills. Don't force me to reconsider that.
Understood,
Mira replied. With no fanfare, Mira Kandor turned and left. So disrespectful, Legate Chandra noted, but very good at what he does. The universe is never short of mercenaries, sir.
No, and my patience is finite, Con added. But for now, the status quo remains. Chapter 7. Caliban was such a polluted world that the urban areas were stratified. Those that could afford it lived in the upper layers, whereas the poorest were subjugated to the deprivations of ground level. The air was toxic, and to breathe easily, a respirator was necessary. No one moved around without a mask, not if they wanted to live. Some of the chemicals floating loose in the atmosphere could physically melt the lungs, resulting in horrific bleeding from the mouth and an inevitable painful demise. As a result of this, the ecosystem was practically barren, only a few microbes able to survive the poisonous mists. Even some of the bacteria that decompose organic matter were unable to exist in great numbers, only appearing in patches across the planet. This meant refuse lay in the streets permanently. Not that there was anything approaching breathable air any higher up in those privileged heights. The air was still poisonous. It just couldn't melt your skin upon direct contact. That was passed for clean air on Caliban. Rain fell from the sky. Not natural precipitation, but polluted liquid laced with heavy metals and caustic chemicals. It was even tinged red, as if to alert you to its danger. If the fluid was any thicker, it would be like the sky was bleeding. And it rained a lot in Menan City. Industrial pollution filled the air with particles that pulled the chemical rain down from the leaded clouds. There was a heavy military presence in the city, but outside they were masked as well, giving their presence an even more sinister appearance. They were authority without identity, and free to exert that authority at their discretion. Thugs with a license and uniform, they frequently brutalized the populace, knowing that they would never be questioned or reprimanded as long as they adhered to Teal's orders. People scurried through the miasma, afraid of the fog and afraid of the military presence. There were a few street traders, but even those stores were set up with airtight cubicles for isolation from the hazardous environment. Shops and bars displayed their presence through the murk with neon signage and elaborate displays, the brightness having to compensate for the sun's lack of penetration into these concrete canyons. Mira Kandor had seen the same scene on so many corporate worlds and despised it, but it did afford some advantages. Surveillance at this level was difficult due to the swirling mists, enabling Mira to stalk prey with impunity. The distinctive armor that Mira wore was something that could prove problematic in terms of easy identification, but it was too useful to abandon, and it did have useful stealth features. Mira had the diffuser activated, which acted as a form of camouflage. It projected what was behind her onto the front of the armor, giving a very limited form of invisibility. It didn't work anywhere near as well in a clear environment, but in any kind of low visibility, it made Mira very difficult to detect. The bar opposite could be barely seen by Mira, even with enhanced optical feeds built into the helmet. The officers' club was exactly what the name suggested, a club for ranking members of the military. Not high rank, or it would have been located in the upper levels, but those with some limited authority. Mira checked the media pad he carried, bringing up the profile of their quarry. The image was of an attractive man in his prime wearing a teal uniform. Mira liked hunting beautiful people. They were always so much easier to detect in a crowd. The door of the bar opened. The airlock inside ejected forth 2 occupants. The masks made identification difficult, but one of the pair was a good potential, and so Mira activated the helmet's recognition software. It scanned the individual and mapped facial features, comparing them with the record. It indicated a match with a very narrow margin of error, so Mira started following the pair. After a while, the pair said goodbye to each other and parted. Mira stayed on target, following the remaining individual as he made his way through the streets. It was difficult to maintain the pace through the crowds, but this hindered him as much as it did Mira. Mira wanted to wait until there was a quiet area where they could spring an ambush in, and it took a long time for the individual to oblige Mira. When he did so, Mira shot a small projectile into his back, tranquilizing him. This was a risk, as if he was wearing a substandard suit. The air could penetrate the internal system and introduce a potentially lethal dose of air. The mask looked like it was an all-in-one, but the air could still prove fatal through skin absorption. After a few steps, he started staggering before collapsing to the ground. Mira kneeled beside him and turned him over, removing the projectile and slapping a sealant patch over the hole. He then started checking his prey's pockets and found his official identification. Scanning it, he validated what he suspected.
"Luca Bresson,"
Mira stated.
I know you,
The disorientated man slurred.
"The Makeen would like a word with you."
The realization became apparent in those drowsy eyes.
No, you can't.
He protested weakly.
Not them.
"Shouldn't have put them off then."
Mira castigated. Luca passed out from the tranquilizer. This was a problem in itself, for they were now some distance from Mira's vehicle. Dragging a body through the streets would be noticed, so they had to be a little more discreet. Mira summoned a vehicle for a pickup. It was a maglev shuttle with a limited intelligence, so it wouldn't take long for it to locate them. For the next few minutes, Mira just had to ensure that no one happened to come across them. Non-lethal measures would be deployed, but these shouldn't be used unless absolutely necessary. Stealth and, failing that, bluff should take priority. Fortunately, the maglev shuttle arrived within a few minutes, and Mira heaved the unconscious body of Luca Bresson into the rear of the shuttle. Once he got back to the Black Sun, his ship, he would have to restrain Luca. There was a good chance he would take any opportunity to commit when he came around, for he knew what awaited him. Not that Mira cared. As far as he was concerned, Luca deserved everything coming to him. It was going to be rough justice, but justice all the same. All in all, a routine acquisition for Mira, along with a suitable reward upon delivery. Chapter 8. They had been exerting themselves for a few hours now, and Carter had noticed the sun had barely moved across the sky. He didn't think to check how long the planetary day was before they came, but it was clear it was significantly longer than the 24 hours he was used to. "Long day," he commented.
63 hours,
Lux responded.
really?
He gasped. "I'll never make it to lunch." Lux emitted more of that whistling that he associated with their form of laughter.
Take a moment, human Carter Vincent,
Lux offered.
Ourselves will not be here all day.
Glad to hear it, Carter sighed. I'm sweating my knackers off here. That's a human phrase Self has not heard before, Lux revealed. Is that a nudge wink? So many human expressions seem to be. Yeah, it's a nudge wink, Carter confirmed.
What are knackers? That is a new word.
Oh, it's an old word for testicles.
Humans are fascinated by their genitals,
Lux observed with some amusement.
They look strange to Fillim.
I don't think I'm ready for this kind of conversation, Doctor. As you self-wish, Lux responded with another humor whistle. Carter rested by seating himself in the trolley, which strained momentarily as it compensated for his weight. The exoskeleton went into passive mode as he retrieved a water bottle. He double-checked to make sure it wasn't a specimen container before taking a big swig.
How are you self-coping with the frame?
The exoskeleton. It's been a great help. Don't think it could be half as flexible without the additional support.
Good. Any pain?
It's more aches now. I know when I've leaned too far, though.
It'll take a long time,
Lux assured.
Long time to sleep, long time to recover.
Tell me about it. The moment was interrupted by a communication by Denham. Doctor, Mr. Vincent, if you could both return to the shuttle as soon as you can, we have a development here.
What is it, human Dr. Denham Richt?
One of the teams has located an old Triskel probe.
Looks like our cells have a natural break, friend self.
I hope our dinosaur friend has some tea on her shuttle. Doubt it, though. Carter thought about what he said for a moment and realized his faux pas. That wasn't racist or specious, was it?
You self are safe, human Carter Vincent,
Lux responded.
The Makeen are aware of dinosaurs and consider being called one a compliment.
That's good.
You self are right to be mindful, though,
Lux added as they trotted back towards the shuttle.
Some species do take exception to some terms. It is best to learn these terms so you self can avoid them.
I will do.
For example, do not use the term hippie in front of the Makeen. They know humans use it in a derisory context. If you self say it, it may cause them to eat yourself.
I'll definitely remember that, Carter stated with enthusiasm. It took them a little while to return, but as they got close, they could see Denham unfolding a device on a flat section of ground. As he stepped back, Carter could see it activate and something appeared over it. He couldn't quite make it out at this distance, as the sunlight was too bright. Still, as they got closer, he could make it out in better detail. It was a three-dimensional projection of what looked like a satellite of some description. It looked like it was stood upright, but at a slight angle. It looked like an unmanned vehicle, being too oddly shaped to house a human. As Denham had called it a Triskel probe, then it had to be human. So, what have they found, doctors? It's a Triskel probe, all right, Denham confirmed. Been there for 70-plus years.
We've downloaded the logs, Nevvon continued, operating a huge touchpad. It appears to be part of a survey done over 90 Triskel years ago, or around 3 metric years ago.
Carter cursed the metric calendar silently. He struggled to make sense of it all. How can 3 years end up being 90? He was comfortable with the Triskel calendar as it was similar to the Earth one, but the metric one was too great a change for him. The Triskel Corporation surveyed the planet, but didn't do anything with it. We'll have to search the archives, but it's likely they just never got round to it. Seems too nice a place to ignore,
Carter commented, perplexed. It's one thing democracies and big business have in common, Mr. Vincent. The wheels turn slowly, Denham wryly opined. Yeah, but 90 years, Carter wondered. Even the old tax refunds move faster than that. The tax refund didn't have to travel light years across interstellar space, Mr. Vincent. Granted, felt like it, though. What do the logs reveal, Doctor? Typical corporate emphasis. Resources listed first, ecosystem not given any priority at all. All they could see was what they could extract. Dr. Nevvon, who watches with patience, explained, with open contempt. Seems they didn't rate it particularly highly in the minerals they were after. Could be why they never colonized it. Other planets had better prospects. Could well be the case. With Triskel, profit always came before people, Rachel added, acerbically. Damn humans never see the true value in things. Just what they can exploit. Nevvon cursed before correcting herself. My apologies. I do not mean to include the Republic in that. It's all right, Doctor, Denham soothed. I can understand your anger. There was a time I would have thought humanity incapable of such understanding, Nevvon elaborated. I thought humans were irredeemable, capable only of destruction and leaving nothing but detritus in their wake. I did agree with those who thought the human species needed to be culled for the good of the universe. The Republic changed your mind then? Carter questioned, more than a little disturbed by her admission. Aye, it took time, but yes, Nevvon replied. When the Republic committed to Makeen ecological principles, I didn't know what to make of it. It was new behavior for humans and completely different to the other human empires. But the Republic has stuck to the principles and I have re-evaluated my old prejudices. But you still feel the same about the corporate empires, though? To the Makeen, there is nothing more important than the natural balance of the universe. We may vary in personality, but the aspect is true to all of us, Nevvon explained. The corporations have absolutely no respect for it at all. Humans generally do, though. I'm starting to see that now, and I'm pleased it has started to take root in your society. Kane has found entries in the Triskel archives that match the logs, Doctor, Denham expressed while staring at the media pad. It seemed it slipped down the priority list of worlds to be colonized. Madness, Carter gasped, awed with the colourful environment around him. This place is nigh on perfect. Bit thin on the atmosphere and perhaps a bit too pink as well, but otherwise perfect. If there had been more palladium in the rocks, Triskel might have agreed with you, Denham answered. As it is, it did not rank highly enough to get populated before the fall of the Triskel Corporation. Their loss is our gain, right? Only if you look after it, Nevvon added an addendum. We have to come to a consensus, Carter, Denham warned. We all have to agree before we can even think about colonizing the planet. We may have to ask the Makeen to join the humans in setting up a colony here, Nevvon indicated, purely to help guide the environmental tuning. We've had quite a bit of success with that, Denham continued. Wherever we've colonized a new world with Makeen help, the colony is now thriving. They have the know-how when it comes to planet shaping. It's our focus, and we like to encourage it in others, Nevvon gushed proudly. Has the probe contaminated the environment at all, Dr. Villain? I can't find any evidence of any contamination, Rachel stated. That doesn't rule out contamination at some point, but it doesn't look like it. That's good, Denham responded. We'll monitor using the crawler drones in the long term, but that's encouraging.
The probe doesn't impact anything we're doing here?
No, it's just a relic of our unenlightened time, Denham dismissed. We'll take it back for some further analysis, but it'll probably just be recycled.
So, alert's over?
We can get back to what we were doing beforehand, yes. How's the specimen collection, Mr. Vincent? Nevvon asked. Oh, we're progressing, Carter summarized obliquely. Seems we've got more and weeds than anything else. There was a little emerged chirrup from the Makeen scientist. Yes, all part of the normal ecosystem, she commented. Not pleasant, but an essential part of life. I guess so, Carter smirked. I didn't expect to be putting it in tubes this morning, though. Life takes us in strange directions, doesn't it? Nevvon mused with humour. You can never tell what tomorrow will bring. As Carter and Lux Pang headed back to their duties, Carter wondered about what Nevvon said. Had she been commenting about his situation or her own? Still, the absurdity of the situation wasn't lost on him. Not that long ago, he would have been grabbing a lackluster sandwich from a shabby franchise as he raced to work, navigating the crowded London streets and sweaty underground tunnels. Now, he was on a pink alien planet, halfway across the galaxy, staring at a beautiful clear sky, 2 moons visible in the distance. In a matter of weeks, he had traveled further than any human of his time. Hell, he had traveled further than all humans in history up to that point combined. Neil Armstrong had been one of the great pioneers of his time. He had since eclipsed that with all the triviality of catching the bus. Not only that, but he was exchanging quips with an erudite space dinosaur that spoke with the sound of panpipes. For all the cynicism expressed by Dr. Nevvon, who watches with patience, he couldn't help but be awed by the majesty and tickled by the ridiculousness.
Chapter 9. The darkened remote conference hall awaited in anticipation with a low electric hum as holographic projection technology warmed up. It took a while to process the data from a remote source, as there was much trickery required to lighten the load on data volume. This meant the load time was increased to improve the performance of the communication itself. This did lead to the occasional problem with the projected environment, where the projected environment got out of synchronization with the real environment and visual errors started to occur. But this was an acceptable compromise. Victor waited patiently in his wheelchair, drumming one of his unfeeling knees with his fingers.
I loathe waiting for these things to fire up.
For these sorts of conferences, sir, a lot of front-end processing needs to be done. There's a lot more data involved than a standard 2-dimensional stream.
I know, but I detest waiting for anyone or anything.
I know, sir, but this is unavoidable. The projector roared into life and started drawing elements within the suite's projection platform. As it drew, parts of the environment at the other end came into focus. It was another room like the one he currently occupied, but smaller. The environment beyond the platform was pictured, but this was very much for background only and not interactive. It did provide some context, though. A window appeared on the background, showing a fully animated window capturing the view outside of a very dark world, showing a barely illuminated cityscape of shadow. As the environment was fully populated, it started drawing the occupant, starting with a rough outline and then refining the detail. The figure was short and squat, and possessing 8 limbs, 6 on the ground and 2 held upright. The general figure was split across both the horizontal and vertical. The rear half was horizontal, and the front half was vertical. There was a distinct head on the stocky body, supported by a thick muscular neck. As the detail was added, the body's tough, shell-like nature could be seen. It was armor of a sort, but closer to the type found in mammals. The legs were stocky but flexible. They were built to support, and it was apparent that the creature they belonged to was not built for speed. They also had a look that was neither quite insectoid nor mammalian. The length of the body was segmented, but the front segments became upright, a posture forged over millions of years. The front limbs had become dexterous but somewhat stubby arms. It was a creature that had fine control, but little reach. The front part of the body was not dissimilar to a humanoid template, but exceptionally bulky. It was clear the creature required a great deal of muscle mass to maintain this posture and must have evolved in a high-gravity environment. The head seemed similar to a human's, with 2 eyes, something analogous to a nose, and a mouth. The mouth had mandibles either side, built to manipulate food into the maw, but otherwise it was similar in nature to a human's. The eyes were massive, taking up a large percentage of the head, and jet black in coloration. Despite its alien appearance, there was still something about it that was still familiar to humanity, and quite expressive. Fully drawn, the figure was now visible in its entirety, resembling a mythical centaur, if it were crossed with a centipede instead of a horse. The figure made a clicking noise from deep in its throat, and the Babel implant started translating.
Hello. Am I addressing Silak Sermos Niritak? This is he. Good. I am Victor Heller, Chief Executive Officer of the Heller Corporation.
Hello, Victor Heller. How may I help you? Silak responded, his face contorted in the vague semblance of a smile. I understand you have a business proposition for me.
I do,
Victor smiled back.
Before we go into details, just let me verify something.
Victor leaned to Karelian Kolarov and whispered to her.
This conference can't be recorded at his end, can it?
No, sir. The security protocols ensure he had to accept a block on all recording media before the conference was set up. Nothing in that room can record anything. It's a full silent zone. Silent zones were something that had to be agreed upon when it came to interstellar communications. When anything and everything could be recorded, there had to be a means of ensuring privacy, and this came in the form of complete and total electronic lockdown over a localized area. The range was not great, but it was secure. Satisfied, Victor continued.
I understand you supply the Hello Corporation with a number of rare commodities.
My clans supply you with rare herbs, spices, and minerals from Dantikar space for 3 generations now.
And it has been a reliable service your clan has provided. When trade deal can last generations, you know it is reliable.
We thank you for your kind words, sir.
Now I know your clan can be reliable, but I also need to know if we can trust you,
Victor hinted with a subject of a sensitive nature. Would you be suggesting trading something of a more morally complex nature?
Of a kind. But I am aware the Dantikar like to keep their business within a clearly defined moral framework.
It is a commonly held misconception. Most Dantikar clans do tend to operate within the laws of the authority governing that space, but this is not part of our ethical standpoint. It is really about making the business flow with minimum interruption. Legal quandaries and ethical dilemmas can slow business down, so adhering to the rules is just the path of least resistance, Silak explained. The Dantikar moved slowly across the platform, lumbering with great effort. But some of the Dantikar clans own a disproportionate amount of the business and keep it to themselves. This means many clans do not achieve the level of success that they are capable of. For those clans, they have to be a bit more adaptable when striking new trade deals.
You feel your clan, the Mosniritak, have been undervalued.
Time and time again, we have been denied opportunities that could have developed and expanded. Those opportunities are taken by those who already have too much and have neither the will nor the want to build on it.
So your ambitions have been frustrated at every turn?
Yes. Fortunately, we have found good business with organizations like yourselves. But good business needs to grow, and we're not getting the opportunities we deserve.
Well, what I propose would benefit your clan immensely, but it does come with a few risks,
Victor suggested.
But risk is part of business.
Risk is a core element of business, but rewards need to complement the risk.
Yes, it does,
Victor laughed at the reminder.
And you will find that we will ensure that the rewards exceed the risks.
What is your proposal? If I may be plain, I assume this involves some illegal activity.
It does. A great deal. It's a high risk but high reward,
Victor added.
You are familiar with how Hela established itself as a major corporation in human society?
Yes, pharmaceuticals and healthcare.
As part of a great strategic policy, we are looking to introduce a narcotic supply into enemy territory. What we plan to do is illegal in Heller's space, but not in theirs. Hence the risk.
You are looking to destabilize your competitor, Silak observed.
Yes. Is this a problem for you?
Only if it infringes on any business I have with your competitor. Who is it?
The Human Democratic Republic.
We have no business with them to impact. So we have no problem with your intentions, Silek judged. So you want someone to run the narcotic trade for you to distance yourself from it?
Yes.
But I have no intention of becoming a visible criminal icon. That could make business difficult.
Every effort will be made in keeping your involvement secret. We don't want you to be a visible presence. The aim here is to destabilize, and confusion aids with that. So we want you to remain a mystery as much as possible, Victor reasoned. There is a risk that you will be discovered. I'm not going to lie about that. That is why it's high risk, and why we want an intermediary in the first place. But we will do everything we can to keep your identity secret and hide your clan's involvement.
Silak near attack deliberated on this. There were clear risks associated with this deal, and, though the humans offered high rewards, he would seek to make these as high as possible.
Getting involved with human politics is a high-risk move, he observed.
But in order for my clan to grow their business portfolio, a new high-end venture would be advantageous.
The Hello Corporation treats its partners generously, Victor assured. We will supply you with all the hardware you need, ships, machinery, and personnel. We will provide you with the products. You will oversee and administer the operation, and do what you can to grow the business. For this, you will receive 50% of the profit.
Risk is high. The Mosnir attack clan requires 75% of profits, no less. Victor visibly rankled at this. The narcotic trade would prove to be exceptionally lucrative once they established it, so this would be an enormous sum of money.
That's a big step up.
This is covert work. You will not find many willing to do it.
Okay then. 75%,
Victor reluctantly conceded. Thank you, Victor Heller. I know this was a hard bargain, but a good businessman must know his own value.
And you seem to know yours.
The Mosnir attack may be undervalued in Dantekar society, but we know our own worth, Silek replied.
And your decision?
I think we can do business, Victor Heller, Silek agreed. But I have one condition. We will not trade anything with a high mortality rate. It's bad for customers and it's bad for business. Addicted customers come back for more, dead ones do not.
Agreed. No high mortality narcotics.
I will speak to our clan elders first, and then I will let you know our decision, Victor Heller, Silek added.
Can we trust the discretion of your clan?
Victor worried at this mention. We would not have the clients we do have if we lacked discretion.
Good,
Victor responded.
When you make the decision, let me know and we will arrange for a meeting where we can go through the details.
Agreed.
It has been a pleasure doing business with you, Silak.
You too, Victor Heller. The holographic generator powered down, the detail of the alien conference room vanishing.
You think we can trust his clan?
Trust is a strong word, Corellian Korolev responded. But I think they can be correctly incentivized. They want the business, and keeping a good relationship with the client is key to that. It's in their interest to be trustworthy.
I don't like the idea of him sharing the information with his entire family, though.
Without any media evidence, it would be little more than hearsay, sir, Corellian countered. As I say, it's very much in their interest to remain quiet about this.
Yeah, well, I want something in place to ensure we are protected,
Victor explained.
Draw up some contingencies.
Chapter 10 In the dark and gloom of the conference room, a group of Dantikar were gathered for a discussion. They rested sideways on lounges built to accommodate their forms, with sturdy bases to protect against the gravity. Their species evolved on a planet orbiting a very distant star, warmed not by solar radiation, but by an active geothermal core. Their environment was one of darkness and heat. For a human, they would barely be able to see in this chamber. To Silak and his large, sensitive eyes, it was as clear as a bright summer's day for humanity. The chamber itself was expansive, located towards the top of the spire of the clan home, built into a gigantic pyramid. The shape was a necessity on this high-gravity world, and everything about the architecture reflected that. Stone was the material of choice here, but not the stone of a primitive culture, the stone of an advanced culture that had learned to fashion it in new and innovative ways.
I have laid before you what the Helo Corporation has offered us, Silak Sir Mosnir-Atak explained. Now I seek your advice. I think this represents an opportunity for the clan we would not otherwise get. Yes, there is a great risk associated with it, but the potential rewards are great. We could finally start to work our way into the clan council.
I'm concerned that this would come out into the open and tarnish the reputation of the clan.
We barely have a reputation as it is, another elder responded. It's worth the risk. We will not be able to brag about it, but the money will help us buy influence.
You are head of the clan, Silak. We invested our trust in you because you are the most shrewd among us. But do you think it is wise to become so closely entwined with the humans?
The humans are good customers and provide us with plenty of trade, but they are not trustworthy.
I agree. They are not trustworthy, Silak responded. This proposition is a big gamble, but we are not going to be offered such a lucrative contract from the clan council. They keep all the big money makers to themselves, whilst they hand us the thin profit margins. If we're ever going to expand, we're going to have to take chances.
How do we protect ourselves from the humans' predilection to betray each other?
I have given this some thought. This plan of theirs does court war between their factions if it is exposed, so they have an incentive to at least ensure that we are protected, Silak explained. I do expect them to betray us if the situation goes against them, so to protect the clan, I want to put in place several plans.
What are they?
Firstly, I will only take a handful of the clan into this endeavor. The fewer of us are involved, the better, Silak suggested. Secondly, if we are exposed, the clan is to immediately shun me and those that go with me. We will become taboo. With any luck, this will not happen, but if it does, this should help mitigate the damage to the clan's reputation.
You're willing to make that sacrifice?
For the good of the clan, yes, Silak determined. Finally, we will compile a great ledger of all transactions under the contract.
Risky in a criminal endeavor.
Yes, but it will be encoded, Silak stated. We need the information in case Victor Heller decides to sacrifice us to protect his own involvement.
Engaging in blackmail would damage our reputation as much as the criminal activity.
It's not to be used for blackmail, just leverage, Silak corrected. He fulfills his end of the bargain, we destroy the data. We have a good deal running with them at the moment, and I do not want to jeopardize that needlessly. This is just a contingency should he decide to ruin the clan to protect the corporation. Discretion is good for business, but so are contingencies.
You feel this is the best way for our clan to progress?
I do. If we do not do something, we will be forever consigned to the fringes of profit. In my estimation, it's worth the risk.
Then you have our support. We will assist you in making any plans for any contingency.
Someone will need to run the existing contracts in my absence.
Who would you recommend?
Jemon Sir Mosnir-Atak.
We concur. Jemon would be a good choice.
Silak was relieved that the elders of his clan agreed with his assessment. They were also tired of being left in the lower strata of their society. In truth, the Dandikar had stagnated in the last few hundred years. As the clan council had hoarded the best contracts to themselves, there had been no push that comes with true competition, and complacency had set in. It was frustrating to those clans who could see that this was having a deleterious effect on their society. Not many Dandikar engaged in criminal activity. They had an ethical code that was built around a capitalist philosophy, but it wasn't as absolute as some cultures had made their moral codes. Not many Dantical broke laws simply because they lobbied for laws to be changed to promote business. If the law got in the way of good business, you campaigned to have the law changed. But this took capital and influence. For the Mosnir attack, they lacked both, so it was much harder for them to achieve this. You will locate to Republic territory? Yes. Do you know where yet? That is yet to be discussed. It should be close to the Hela border for both the ease of supply and the need for a quick getaway. The humans are not consistent in their approach to narcotics. What punitive measures can we expect from the Republic? They are liberal in their approach to recreational drug use, but they maintain strict penalties for the illegal trade. They do not execute their criminals, but a lengthy incarceration period can be expected. Be careful, Silak. You've been a good clan leader, and we will not wish to lose you. You have always put the clan first. I appreciate this sentiment. I pray that the gods of commerce will favor us, Silak responded. But good sense and an awareness of the human pathology should see us through. If it does not, then I will accept the consequences. We wish you good fortune, Silak. Thank you, elders, Silak ceded. To family and fortune. Rentori bless us. Chapter 11. The return trip back to the Liberator was a peaceful but spectacular affair. Carter watched the planet drop away below them through the transparent hull virtual window. If there was one thing he loved about these shuttles, it was the fact that he could make any part of the hull transparent, so he could view the exterior. Generally, it was vaguely reminiscent of getting into the back of a large van back in his previous life, only with ergonomically designed seating in some compartments. But it was when the transparent effect was made clear to him that he realized just how much more advanced these vehicles were. He watched with fascination as the pink landscape fell away. He marveled at the color spectrum of the planet. It was as pink as the Earth had been green. Everything else was very familiar, especially at a distance. Continents, oceans, clouds. It had been a pleasant diversion to spend some time in a natural environment. The Liberator had some excellent gardens, but it was no replacement for the real thing. He was glad to get rid of the regulator, though, the awkward lump in his throat removed with some gagging. Beautiful place, Carter commented. Will we be coming back at all? Not in the immediate future, Denham responded. I imagine someone will get tasked with a return survey after all the analysis has been done, but it's unlikely to be us. That's a shame. You'll see plenty of worlds, Mr. Vincent. Don't worry about that, Denham assured. It's one of the best aspects of this job, getting to see the universe. If there's anything to go by, then I'm all for it, Carter smiled. Never thought I'd see the day when I'd spend a good part of it shoveling and be pleased about it. Both Denham and Rachel smiled. Lux Pang's weird collar mouth twitched in an expression Carter had not seen before, but there was a brief high-pitched whistle that he recognized as a very brief laugh. Carter equated the expression to a smile as a result. Strange how he should be getting used to such alien body language already. I'm glad that you self-enjoyed the survey, human Carter Vincent, Lux announced. It is compelling to see enthusiasm for nature and science in humans. We're not all bad, Carter corrected, with some tongue-in-cheek bravado. Lux made the same expression again. Another smile. He continued to watch the world slowly sink away from them as they drew closer to the Liberator. He could now see the whole orb in its blue-pink glory. The shuttle drew into the hangar and he lost sight of the planet, returning to reality again. The shuttle touched down gently using its maglev engines, the rear of the vehicle unfolding to allow them to depart the vehicle. Dr. Lux Pang was keen to get out of the confines, being far more cramped at his size. Guess he was feeling cooped up, Carter observed. So would you if you were him, Denham responded. The shuttle must seem that much more of a metal box for him. I guess. Why isn't the shuttle bigger to accommodate xenos like the Fillim? Most ships were designed before we started making alliances with the Fillim and Makeen, so they weren't really built to their specifications. You can see the Liberator is, but these shuttles are quite an old design now, Denham explained. Still, It looks like you've made some new friends today. It's been instructive. I have to admit, you're adapting to the role better than I imagined. You seem to be a natural for xeno relations. It's strange, I'll admit, and that Makeen doctor frankly terrifies me. But once you get talking, you realize there's more common ground than you thought, Carter noted. Their view on humanity is a little disturbing, though. Can you blame them? Denham replied. To their point of view, our species has been reckless to the point of abandon. And we have been. Never thought humanity would be a pariah in the interstellar community, though. We can change that, though. The Fillim are working with us now, something they refused to do with the corporations, and the Makeen were more likely to attack humans than help them before. That's not reassuring me. The Makeen? Oh, if people were more honest, they would admit that they were terrified of them too, Denham admitted. The Makeen are all predator, and they bring out the prey in us, and we don't like being reminded of such primal fear. Glad I'm not the only one. It does make things different. We've founded a number of colonies in conjunction with the Makeen, and whilst we laud them with success stories, there's always tension between the two cultures, Denham added. These things take time. Are there many of them? It's just a small amount at the moment, but growing all the time, Denham explained. Hopefully we'll get to visit one at some point. It'll be interesting to see. Just one word of advice. Never go to a Makeen restaurant, or what they call a restaurant. Why? They may have learned to cook food, but they still like to maintain their killer instinct. I like my steak rare, but it's a bit different when it arrives bloody and mooing in distress, Denham elaborated. Kills my appetite. Carter wasn't entirely sure if Denham was being droll. His humor was so dry it could be difficult to tell with him. If there's one thing I've learned today, it's that our allies think of us as dangerous children. Carter sighed. And they're our friends. I'd hate to think what the other xeno species think of us. But things do change, Mr. Vincent, Denham reminded. I think getting the Fillim on board was relatively easy, as they always wanted to help. But getting the Makeen on board was an achievement. They've gone from hostile to friendly in less than 30 trillion years. There's always scope to improve our standing. It seems he can't really sink much lower in any respect. On the plus side, that should make our job easier. Now you're definitely being facetious, Doctor, Carter commented with a raised eyebrow. If it steers the conversation into a more positive mindset, then yes, Denham smirked. You're dwelling too much on what humanity was and not enough on what humanity could be. What can I say, Doctor? I'm a cynical man from a cynical age, Carter replied. But I have to say, I admire your dedication to the vision. I'm old enough that I can remember the way things used to be, under the Triskel Corporation. When you grow up in an environment like that, this level of freedom is just euphoric, Denham admitted. That, Mr. Vincent, is why I have such a positive outlook. You've got me there, Carter conceded, unloading the trolley containing all the specimens he had collected. And for all the talk of cynicism, I suspect there's an optimist inside of you. It's a nice thought, Doc, but I suspect he got mugged by the cynic, beaten by the paranoid, and strangled by the skeptic. Denham smiled, amused by Carter's lyricism. You have a peculiar sense of humor, Mr. Vincent. Helps me cope with the world, Carter grinned. You still on for dinner later? I've got to preserve and store these specimens you collected, but I should be free later. I can notify you when I'm ready. Okay, I can wait until then. I can get some exercise in the meantime, build up an appetite. Carter was coming to appreciate his regular meals with Denham, despite some of the weird concoctions he had managed to introduce him to. He had to admit, though, that everything that Denham had recommended had been passable, at least. Nothing he had outright hated yet. Not that he could say the same for some of the things Denham had eaten. I'll catch up with you later, then. Chapter 12. I think we can count that as a productive visit, don't you think? Denham concluded. We should be able to compile a sufficient dataset from the readings we've recorded, Dr. Nevvon, who watches with patience, replied. Plus, with all the samples the team collected, we should have enough to build a comprehensive profile of the ecosystem. Denham placed a number of specimens into a storage locker with a built-in climate control. Everything was kept in a customizable lattice that rotated through the 3 dimensions. It looked bulky and unwieldy, but when closed it was an efficient use of space. Have you got any preliminary thoughts on the issue, Doctor?
It certainly looks like a habitable planet for humans, but it's too early to draw any real conclusions. The ecosystem looks sturdy enough, but appearances can be deceiving. The web of interdependencies can be very fragile, if just one species is removed from the equation.
I suppose the key is whether we can increase the oxygen in the atmosphere without causing any part of that web to collapse.
The universe is a harsh place, and life is fragile,
Dr. Nevvon opined.
Every species lost is a tragedy, and not without consequence.
Dr. Nevvon was inspecting one of the samples with her 4 limbs, whilst her main hands were carrying a specimen container. Denham watched her manipulate the sample with great dexterity. The Makeen limbs were of differing dexterity, with the main middle limbs being stronger but lacking finesse, whereas the 4 limbs were weaker but far more dexterous. I hope it is possible to colonize. It seems such a remarkable world.
I hope so as well. The Makeen require a higher oxygen concentration, though, so it might be we fine-tune it for humans, but not for Makeen.
Would that pose a problem for the proposed joint project?
It may lock the Makeen out of the project, but it will not prevent us from helping humanity colonize it if it is deemed suitable,
Nevvon commented.
I've been encouraged by the success of previous efforts and hope this follows the same pattern.
So do I, Doctor, Denham agreed. I think the joint collaborations in planet shaping have been roaring successes so far.
They have been, but the dew still rests on the leaves.
Denham had heard this Makeen phrase before. It was analogous to early days in human parlance. He'd been around them long enough to realize many of their phrases revolved around the natural world. It was who they were as a people. It's still a fledgling alliance, but we hope to build strong foundations here.
The projects are going well, but it is in the little things I've noticed that I am impressed.
How so?
Such a commitment and respect for nature amongst your teams. Even the ancient human from the age that killed your homeworld showed concern and respect for nature,
Nevvon indicated.
That has impressed me.
They all believe in the Republic's commitment to ecological preservation, Denham added. I'm proud of them all.
As you should be, Doctor, Nevvon acknowledged. I'm starting to think that the problem with humanity is not within its people, but its leaders. If the right humans are in charge, you flourish. If the wrong humans are in charge, you get...
The corporations. I know, Denham finished.
There are many Makeen who still despise humans, and those who are coming around to the potential of the Republic consider it to be a deviant state, abnormal to the rest of human society. In this case, being a deviant is a positive thing.
There are going to be many humans in the corporate empires who believe in the natural world as well.
I'm starting to believe that may be the truth. But from our point of view, the corporations are the spoilers. We have high hopes for the Republic, but little for the rest of humanity.
I hope I can convince you otherwise.
And I hope that you are prepared for a challenge.
Nevvon made a chirping noise which Denham recognized as a laugh in their species. It was difficult to recognize a smile on them, though. The multitude of razor-sharp teeth made that difficult, but the noise was distinctive. I appreciate it's going to be a challenge, but a good scientist always puts assertions to the test.
I'm not sure the evidence is with you on this one, Doctor.
We shall see.
Should you ever develop a workable theory, do please let me know.
Nevvon placed the sample down and started manipulating a media pad.
You have my datasphere address.
The Makeen's manner was light-hearted and playful, a positive mindset that was at odds with that instinctual fear that ran within him. As he had stated to Carter, it was a standard human fear. What he had neglected to mention was that it applied to him as well.
Is that all of the specimens?
I think we've got them all secured, Denham determined. Best notify Mr. Vincent and see if he's still available for dinner.
That's the ancient human, is it not?
Yes.
I know I positively terrified him, Nevvon noted, but he did well, considering he'd never met one of my species before.
He is proving to be full of surprises. Nothing how I'd imagined someone of his time to be like.
Perhaps we have both been guilty of making presumptions about humans, Dr. Nevvon teased.
Denham smiled at this. The positive aspect of this good-natured teasing was that it was reinforcing a commonality between them, and Denham knew that this was an essential part of strengthening those alliances. The more they identified with each other, the closer they got. I guess we have. Denham messaged Carter and received a positive response. Well, unless there's anything else that needs to be done urgently, I shall see you tomorrow.
Enjoy your meal, Doctor, Nevvon wished.
You will notify me when you publish your findings, won't you?
Certainly, Doctor. I would be more than happy to, Nevvon acknowledged. I always welcome peer reviews.
And I always enjoy reading up on my collaborations. Chapter 13. Little Proxima was a restaurant located at the front of the Liberator. It was a little more sophisticated than the canteens located around the ship, but it wasn't overly so. Denham would consider this to be the middle ground between canteen fare and high-priced cuisine. It was a well-known franchise with outlets located across hundreds of systems. He thought quite highly of the place, for despite being a franchise, it served good quality food for a reasonable price. However, he believed it was the view that tempted Carter Vincent to this location. He spied Carter sat on a table near the middle of the floor and moved across to join him. I see why you chose to change the venue.
It's rather spectacular, isn't it? Carter grinned. I only found out about this place the other day. Brina DeBrace told me about it.
I don't know her, Denham struggled.
She's one of the diplomatic aides. Nice lady, Carter explained. She's been helping me learn some of the diplomatic protocols. She's been very tolerant of my stupidity.
Denham sat down opposite Carter. Have you ordered yet?
No, I was waiting for you. I always feel it to be bad manners to jump the gun like that.
Now there's another phrase for me to learn.
Sorry, Doc. Force of habit.
So have you made a decision yet?
Decided to be a little conservative. So I'm having a steak with some of those weird tattered chips, Carter elaborated. Not sure what some of these sauces are, though. Went with the pepper sauce, though.
The pepper sauce is a good choice.
I mean, what's gone sauce?
Ooh, that's quite spicy. I wouldn't recommend it unless you have the taste for the extreme end of spiciness.
I see. So it's more of a one taste and then you're gone thing, then?
Denham chuckled quietly. Not quite, Denham commented. I see the same worry about jumping the gun didn't extend to drinks then. They both quickly glanced at the foaming beer mug in front of Carter.
You can't expect a man to wait on beer.
Evidently.
What do you fancy then?
I quite like their manga chicken.
That sounds rather normal for you.
It's what I want.
Okay, let's see if I can place an order with this thing.
Carter struggled with his media pad, desperately trying to locate and order their meals. You're managing to use the media pad then?
It's not easy, but I'm getting used to it. Feel like a bit of a granddad being given the latest technology.
There's always someone younger who can use the technology better than you. Denham wryly smiled. My eldest, Tristan, worked on the Hypnos far faster than I ever could.
What's the Hypnos?
It's a games machine. Did they have alternative reality games in your time?
Are they like computer games?
Yes, but they link to your own mind and create a reality in your own subconsciousness.
Ugh, sounds a little too invasive for me, Carter stated.
Right. 1 steak and 1 manga chicken.
Whatever that is.
Drink? I'll have a wine. Green, preferably.
Green? Carter shrugged.
He flicked through the menu and found the wine list.
Green it is,
he stated, noticing the expanded list of colours. Standard or large? Get the large.
Good man, Carter encouraged. How many colours does wine come in now?
All of them, I think, Denham recalled. Grapes changed on a lot of different worlds, giving rise to plenty of new colours and types.
I always thought wine pretty much tasted all the same. You could tell the difference in the quality, and maybe there were differences between the types, but the differences were small and subtle.
It's the same now. The new colours offer a few minor changes, but not that much.
For a moment there, I thought you were going to be one of those wine snobs.
Snob?
It's another word for an elitist, someone who thinks they're better than everyone else.
Looks like wine snobs have been an aspect all through history then. Who would have thought one of the few remaining things from my time would be the people who drone on pretentiously about wine? Carter laughed. Watch out. Here come the drones. A small drone flew over Denham's head and descended, gingerly placing a wine glass before him. In the glass was a jade-tinted liquid that was crystal clear, rather than the swampy concoction Carter had imagined. Denham sipped a little and savored the taste of the wine. In a blind taste test, he would be hard-pressed to tell this from a good-quality rosé. But that was the point Carter was making. Those things were a bit of a surprise when they brought me my pint. The drones. Would have thought you had them in your age. We did, but we didn't use them to serve food. We had waiters, Carter reminisced. Poor sods who worked for minimum wage, tending to the wants and needs of an entitled clientele. Some places still have waiters, Denham corrected. Some people just like the human touch. The drones ain't so bad, Carter surmised. As long as they don't spill my drink, I'm happy with them. So, what did you make of today? Denham asked. You've gotten to know representatives of 2 different species now, and made some new friends. I have to admit, Doctor, these xenos are nothing like how I imagined them. How so? Well, they aren't anything like the little green men from science fiction for a start. You mean humanoids? Not many of them in the universe, Denham dismissed. There's no other species in the universe quite like us in structure. It seems evolution is quite inventive when it comes to developing multiple solutions to the same problems. No humanoids at all. So much for convergent evolution, then. Not true, Mr. Vincent. Convergent evolution seems to have happened many times. Eyes articulated, dexterous limbs, mouths, and penises. All of them evolved time and again across many worlds and environments. It's just the body configuration was different. I suppose it's arrogant to assume that we were such a perfect design. We are just one design out of many possible combinations. There's weirder out there. But beyond the physical stuff, they just defeated my expectations in their character and behavior, Carter observed. Dr. Lux Pang seems quite good-natured, but there's something about his character that's a bit like a disappointed dad. And Dr. Nevvon, with too many names, was far more articulate and intelligent than I would have ever expected for a creature that looked like the way she does. You know, you do have to be a bit wary of making too many generalizations based on a species, Mr. Vincent, Denham warned. There are characteristics endemic to a species, and then there are characteristics that belong to the individual. Dr. Nevvon did make that point. She did point out that she was more welcoming to humans than a lot of Makeen. It's these sorts of observations you need to keep making. Just look at us humans. What can you say about us as a species? We're curious, sure. Everybody likes that group characteristic. But what about our rebellious nature? Denham pointed out. Everyone knows that humans are contrary and stubborn, but we don't like to admit those characteristics as near universal, do we? People don't like admitting that they're flawed. I guess it's even more grating when it applies to the whole species. And yet, there's still some massive differences between individual humans as well, as there are between you and me. Denham continued, building momentum. When you deal with xenospecies, you have to consider the group dynamic and the individual dynamic. That's becoming apparent. If Dr. Nevvon is a Makeen who is sympathetic to humans, I'd hate to meet one that isn't. Well, on that point, you're in luck, Denham responded. Generally, those Makeen that participate in the combined projects tend to be those more favorable to humans. The others generally do not. That's a relief. Their meals arrived, brought to them by a small fleet of drones. The steak placed in front of Carter smelled gorgeous, instantly provoking audible sounds from his stomach. The manga chicken placed in front of Denham smelled intriguing, emanating sweet and tangy aromas simultaneously. What are these things? Diced mushrooms, by the looks of it. Why diced? Depends on the mushrooms they use. If it's a small one, it's just sliced and retains its shape. If it's one of the really big mushrooms, they dice them.
Carter jabbed at his steak to test it for any hidden surprises before he started cutting it up. Denham looked at the spatchcock chicken and started to dissect it, both anatomically and gastronomically. "This is good," Carter expressed. "Nice and juicy." "So, what's your conclusions for today?" The universe hates us and wants us to grow up. Xenos are nothing like popular science fiction, and keep an open mind. It's a unique perspective, Denham chuckled. Certainly succinct. There's more to it than that, though, obviously. But that's the brief version, Carter teased. Still, it's good to see you making xeno friends so easily. Let me tell you a story, Doctor, Carter regaled. I grew up in the East End of London, and there was a rather inflated idea of community, that we stood together and looked after each other. But it was a fiction. Denham looked at Carter curiously, wondering where he was going with this. There was a Muslim lad who lived a few streets away from me, and one day I happened to come along and found him getting bullied by some other lads. I stood up for him and got a kicking for my trouble, Carter recalled. He was grateful that someone at least tried to help, and we got to know each other after that. Aziz was a good lad, and we became good friends. The fact that he was a Muslim barely ever came up. Carter took a moment to chew on some meat, savouring the taste. We grew up and drifted apart a little when we went off to university, but we kept in touch. He became an architect in the end, Carter elaborated. But the point being that he was from a very different background to me. Yet we got on like a house on fire. All I saw was the common ground between us, which were the wankers who used to bully the others. Denham was confused by the analogy involving fire, but he followed what Carter was trying to say. So you're saying today was reminiscent of that? Yeah. Not the getting a kicking part, but the making a new friend part, Carter emphasized. I went back there as an adult and realized those same wankers were the ones banging on about how great the East End was, and I realized that it was not because they felt love for the community, but fear for what lay outside it. Sadly, you do still get communities like that. Don't get me wrong, there were plenty of good people there. It's just the wankers that soured me on the whole concept, Carter rankled. Made me realize that groups are and that community is where you find it. I got on with Lux purely because we started talking, and we made connections. Nothing more complicated than that. So you're not fond of where you grew up? It was frankly, Carter surmised. Every community has its but that one had far more than its fair share. Can't say I was overly fond of the place I grew up either, Denham remembered. The people weren't that bad, but it was overcrowded and polluted. I know what you mean about certain people. There always seems to be those who aspire to be a big fish in a small pond, but never have the ambition to go further. They knew they couldn't challenge the state. Not without serious risk, so they kept their heads down and fed on their own. Bullies who like to stay within certain boundaries, Carter agreed. Remember you stated there was an optimist inside of my cynical exterior. Well, I think you may have an inner cynic. Carter recalled that earlier conversation and turned it around for comedic effect. I don't deny I have certain misgivings about humanity, Mr. Vincent, but that doesn't make me an outright cynic, Denham contested. Yeah, but there's a little nugget of one in there, Carter taunted good-naturedly. This isn't an ideological competition, Denham smirked. Carter giggled like a naughty child. Will you be compiling a report on your findings? Not a report as such, more of a series of case notes, observations maybe, Carter fumbled. Work towards cultural profiles in any case. I hope you're curtailing the more colourful and extravagant end of your vernacular, Mr. Vincent, Denham advised. Oh, I can talk the talk when it comes to business speak, Carter assured, though I am having to be careful of terms and phrases that are long obsolete. I've really been working that Datasphere dictionary. It's good to see you getting on. It's difficult, but I'm managing, Carter stated. Sometimes it all gets a bit much, but I'd rather be challenged than left with nothing to do. And the emotional stresses? There's good days and bad days. I'm still taking it one day at a time at the moment. Carter admitted. But I'm keeping my head above water. Good. If you start feeling it getting too much for you to cope with, let me know and we'll book you some time with a therapist. I will, though I feel more comfortable speaking to you or Kane. I can always spare some time if you need it. I appreciate it, Carter thanked. I do find Kane good to talk to, though. Why's that? He just seems to be a good listener, Carter shrugged. Funny that it should be the artificial person that I find it easiest to talk to. He is very sophisticated. And with so many bodies, he's always available. It doesn't feel like I'm taking away from anyone's time. And you shouldn't think that way, Mr. Vincent, Denham lightly reprimanded. We all make time. We all have a duty of care for each other. I know, but old habits die hard. Is that an old saying? Yeah. I quite like that one. Short and to the point. Feel free to use it. Either way, I'm always available. It was good today, all things considered, Carter expressed. Seen a strange new world and boldly gone when no one's gone before. I can't always tell with you, but it feels like you're making another joke. In a manner of speaking. Think it might take too long to explain, though. Carter stared out at the portal of the planet below and the space beyond. It's a strange universe out there. No doubt about that. Weirder than I ever imagined. And I have no doubt there's weirder to come. But you know what? What? I want to know more. Chapter 14. The Black Sun arrived in the Curse system without ceremony. Ker was a system that lay just within Makeen's space and bordered Republic territory, which Mira Kandor had to travel through to reach this destination. Mira's quarry, Luca Bresson, remained confined in the containment cells in the rear of the ship. He made a racket periodically, but he was running out of energy, and Mira just ignored the noise. With so many captives over the years, it was easy to switch off the cacophony they made. Mira came to Ker to collect the acquisition fee, which was a bounty by any other term. Only this time, the bounty wasn't to be collected on some colony, but from a rendezvous with another ship. Unusual but not unheard of. A sensor alert pinged on the console and a massive warship dropped out of its slide across the system. It was a Makeen warship and possessed many of the traits the Makeen themselves possessed. It was like a predator, intimidating, and bearing teeth. Not that Mira had anything to fear. To Mira, the Makeen were trusted friends and clients. The Black Sun navigated its way towards the hangar bay, docking with practiced ease. Makeen hangars were similar to standard human hangars, but they were generally longer and less high. You had the nanoswarm shield protecting the entrance, a flat landing surface and logistical automation. Where it differed was the size of the ships, which had to be bigger, and there was a heavier reliance on bioorganic technology. Much of the automation was bioorganic in nature, resembling creatures more than machines, but machines they were. There was a heavy emphasis on vegetation in the hangar. It was all neatly gardened rather than wild, and kept to specific areas, never causing any blockages. Mira had been on many Makeen ships and was familiar with their aesthetic. Mira stepped off the ship, still in armor, and descended the ramp. It was sweltering, like all Makeen ships, but it didn't bother Mira, whose armor had built-in cooling. There was a welcoming committee of 3 Makeen, 2 flanking the other, who stood slightly ahead. The grass that bends me never breaks, the head Makeen spoke.
When the rock falls.
Mira Kandor responded. So, do you have him?
Yes.
Good, the Makeen announced. After careful observation, Traeger wants to see you. Mira Kandor nodded and then returned inside to retrieve Luca Bresson. Mira dragged him out of his cell and hurled him down the ramp. He tumbled down, unable to protect himself with his wrists bound, and collapsed in a heap at the bottom. He raised his head, curious to see where he was and why it was so hot. The lead Makeen loomed over him, entering his field of vision. Luca realized. This is him?
That's him,
Mira Kandor repeated. The Makeen checked his own media device. Though it served the same purpose as the human media pad, the design was quite different. Designed to be used with 4 arms, It had multiple interfaces and a screen that curved so that all three Makeen eyes could clearly see it. Luca's identity was verified, and the Makeen seemed satisfied. Doesn't look like much.
They never do,
Mira agreed. Follow me. The triumvirate of Makeen turned and made their way into a huge corridor. Mira Kandor hauled Luca to his feet and shoved him forward. You can't let them have me, Luca protested. They'll kill me.
They pay good money for you. Why should I care what happens to you?
We're both humans. You can't leave me to face Makeen justice. Humans never get a fair trial from them.
Just because we are the same species, don't presume I have any sympathies for you,
Mira Kandor replied.
You're nothing but a fee for me.
Luca yelled at Mira. Mira shoved Luca once more.
Move!
They traipsed through the sultry Makeen ship. The huge corridors were lined with vegetation, with some plants even growing into the technology in a symbiotic interface. The technology was similarly large, built for the much larger Makeen. Mira knew how to use it, but it was difficult for a human to use. They just didn't have the reach or strength to do it easily. The Makeen led Mira Kandor and Luca Bresson into a chamber. Round in nature, it appeared to be more like an amphitheater than a conference room, with room for demonstrations or debate in the middle and a gallery lining the outer rim. In the middle of the amphitheater stood a single Makeen reading a media pad. He stood out among the other Makeen for having a cybernetic middle eye and a purple tattoo along his flanks.
Trago!
Mira.
This is Luca Bresson.
That's nearly all of them now,
Trago sighed.
There's still a few more,
Mira added. More of what? Luca wondered.
Butchers of Lyceran, dear boy,
Trago growled.
What else in your pathetic history do you think we would be after you for?
Lyceran was so long ago.
You think we would forget something like that?
Trago responded with controlled fury.
You are, or were, Major Luca Bresson, one of the commanders on the ground forces that invaded Lysaran Megara. You ordered the deaths of thousands of Makeen on that world. You didn't even give them clean deaths, deciding to toy with them, torturing them.
I was just following orders.
The pitiful defense of the weak-willed,
Trago demeaned, restraining his anger. Control like this was unusual in the Makeen, especially when dealing with such an emotive subject. Mira could see the triumvirate that they followed was seething with barely repressed fury. If it wasn't for their deference to Trago, they would have torn Luca apart already. I didn't have a choice. If we don't follow orders, we're tortured or executed ourselves.
We know what happened. We have survivor accounts of what happened and surveillance footage, Trago contested. They depict you and your men reveling in your depravity.
Trago's mouth was now mere inches away from Luca's face, and he could feel his hot breath on him.
After our military arrived and chased you out of the system, the Aryans asked us not to respond. They understood our anger, and they knew what it would entail. But one does not say no to the Aryans, Trago stated. So, we had to suppress that rage and hold on to it. But at the same time, we could not let such an atrocity go unpunished.
Trago moved away from Luca and started pacing around the room, gesturing with his forelimbs.
We couldn't respond directly. We'd given our word to the Aryans that there would be no reprisal, no attack on the Teal world. But that didn't mean there wouldn't be some form of vengeance against the architects of the invasion, Trago explained. Those architects could not all die or disappear at once. That would be suspicious. But if they were to disappear over time, it would look more natural.
The others?
Not many of you left now, dear boy, Trago stated. Just a clawful left, though I doubt there was ever a need for the subterfuge. The Aryans are surely aware of it, and they understand us well enough to know we will not let this pass without some modicum of resolution. They know, and their inaction suggests a tacit endorsement. I believe they see it as an acceptable compromise.
Tregor slowly worked his way back to the prone Luca.
Smart, really. They reign in our anger and prevent a potential war, but allow us to think we're getting our own back and extracting some form of justice, Tregor continued. Now, why would I go to the trouble of telling you all of this? You know why you're here, and from the smell of you, you know what we're going to do with you.
The terror Luca Bresson was suffering had already caused him to soil himself. He understood his fate. That was evident. He was whimpering, barely able to keep any coherence at all.
I just wanted you to know that, from the moment you raised your puny claw to one of my brethren, you were marked, and that nothing was going to stop us from ending up in this place, at this time. It was inevitable.
Please don't.
This is strong as the mountain Hinnish. His sibling was one of those your men tortured.
I'm sorry.
Too late for apologies, human. Way too late.
Menish lifted Luca up with his forearms and reached forth with one of his clawed middle limbs. He slowly inserted his long claw into Luca.
Luca screamed in agony as
drawing out the process as much as he could. His teeth, ensuring he could feel every last second of his torment. One of the other Makeen closed in and gulping it down in one swift movement. For the next few seconds, the Makeen over the room, some splattering across Mira's armor. Mira didn't flinch or even move during the evisceration.
Now, if you just give me a moment, Mira, I'll authorize the payment for the acquisition,
Tregor announced, done with his tormenting.
A fitting end,
Mira Kandor stated.
Too merciful, Tregor responded, especially for his blighted kind. Present company excluded, of course.
The statement didn't disturb Mira in the slightest. Luca had tortured sapients, and he had not been alone. Mira couldn't blame Tregor for his anger.
There, the payment's been authorized and should now be in your account.
It's been a pleasure.
Have you got any leads on those remaining?
Not yet, but I will keep you informed.
By the way, Mira, Corin wants to speak to you.
Personal or professional?
Personal.
Tell him I'll be in touch.
I'll let him know.